So today we'll be talking about supply and demand charts and what those look like when you implement a tax wedge. So you have your supply, your demand, quantity, and price. And you have your equilibrium here. And when you implement a tax wedge, your tax wedge has to hit both the supply and the demand curve. So if I implement, or if I dot my wedge here, my tax wedge comes in here. This little triangle of space right here becomes deadweight loss, meaning those are just exchanges that don't happen. But if I were to put numbers on this, you would then see that this top portion here is the price that consumers pay of the tax, and then the bottom part is the price that producers pay in tax. So when you implement a tax wedge, either the consumers or the producers are going to share the burden of the tax, or one of them is going to take it on more than the other, or they might just completely take the burden, and either the consumer or the producer will pay nothing in the tax. So say you have your supply curve here, your price and your quantity, but then you have a perfectly inelastic demand. Well, when you implement your tax wedge, your wedge has to hit both the supply and the demand. So you would dot on the demand here, and it would come down onto your supply. So then your wedge would be in here. Now when you look at this, it might be a little confusing, but because the demand curve is inelastic, the consumers bear the burden of the entire tax. On the flip side, if I have a perfectly elastic demand, then the weight of the tax would fall completely on the producer. So you have your price, your quantity, you have a perfectly elastic demand, and then you have your regular supply. Because the wedge has to hit both the supply and the demand curve, your wedge would hit in and about here. So you would come over here, and then this becomes what the producers pay. And because there's nothing above the demand line, the consumers don't pay anything, and this tax burden falls completely on the producers. So when you implement a tax wedge, you have to find the amount of it. So without having numbers or anything to make it confusing, so you have your tax wedge, it's right here. You have your deadweight loss in here. Your wedge comes here. So saying that there's numbers here, you would just find the area of this rectangle. All right, well, thank you for watching. That was supply and demand with the tax wedge implemented in a very simple way.